It's exciting. I'm glad that you guys were able to come along tonight. Oh, here we go. Coming in now, that's great.
Corky, that must be my sister.
Is it all your fan club tonight, Mark?
No, I don't know anybody else. But
fantastic. I can see Sandra and Kerry and Corkin. Is that who you said your sister was?
I think that'll be my sister, yes.
Excellent.
She's a house designer. She did our house designs for us.
Oh, fantastic. I can see Kate and Peter.
So, all right, so I think I'll kick off the Facebook Live as well.
Great. So as usual, we're going live on Facebook at the same time. And are we saving this recording?
Yeah.
We'll be recording this session as well for people that couldn't make it. For some people, they've got better places to be on a Friday night, although that might all be changing. Hi, Peter.
Hello.
Oh, personally, I can't think of a better place to be than inside, hanging out with some interesting people on a night. With my hubby. It's our idea of date night.
It's called online dating, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, things have changed this year, far out. And you're looking pretty comfortable there. I expected to see you rugged up, Mark, with jackets and scarves and beanies.
I'm a little warm actually. I might even take my jumper off.
Oh,
it's
that's
nice and warm in here.
That's just being cheeky.
We got no heating on just at the moment, so it's nice and warm.
It's exciting.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Here we are. We've got someone in Hawaii coming in. That's fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Hi, Tanya.
That's cool.
I know.
I can introduce you to Peter. Peter has done a wonderful book, including on the forest area, including a lot about the heritage area of the Ecovillage.
Oh.
And he went on a wonderful walk up to the top where the men go to the caves the other day and took some beautiful photos. So I'm looking forward to seeing them.
Oh, that's exciting.
Why not?
Hello, Peter.
Hello, Kate. I didn't recognize you.
Yeah, everyone looks a bit different on Zoom.
Yeah.
I'm just
I haven't seen you in a while.
That's great. So, Peter, do you know a bit about Mark's house?
A little bit, yeah, off the top of my head, yeah.
Fantastic.
You'd have studied the history of it, wouldn't you, and found bits on it, wouldn't you?
Me or Mark? I don't know a whole lot about it, but I'm sure Mark and Nicky have.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll get my notes out actually.
Great. Well, there you go, Mark. We've got a phone a friend option for you.
You
Early question.
You caught me on the hop. That's all right. Yeah.
All right, I've got my house designer on the panel here.
Oh, call in the
Lovely.
So you can answer the curly ones.
That's great. We're just going to one more.
Kate, I hadn't realised it was that Kate. Now your picture's on. Where are you up the coast or are you down here, Kate?
I'm up at McLean with Gail.
Oh, right. Fantastic.
Yeah, we're in the flat.
That's great. I think Gail probably put in some of the plants at your house, Mark.
Oh, good.
Many moons ago.
Look, Mark, I've only got a little bit that I included in it, if you're interested. But built in 1916.
Yep.
Well, you probably already knew that, yeah.
I was always told 1915, but maybe it was started in...
Probably took a year to build it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a early war house, so...
Started in 1915, finished in 16.
That sounds about right, yeah. And a dormitory was built sometime after for the Mount Penang boys.
Mm-hmm.
Handpicked to assist, yeah. Actually, I spoke with a man who had actually lived in that house, John Stone. He's a retired manager from the research.
I think we've been consulting with him over some of the...
Yeah, now I got his name from Kate, so probably you've already heard about him, yeah.
Yeah, he's got some good archives.
Yeah.
Very good. Peter, we might come back to you a bit later in the session to fill in some gaps.
Yeah, right.
As we tell the story of what Mark have been doing. So everyone, we're just going to mute you all now for the sake of keeping the sound and the speaker view working properly. But I'd like to introduce you all to Mark. He's one of the owners of the what we call the Heritage House, or what has been renamed Bellbird House here at Narara Ecovillage. And he and his wife Nicky have purchased the property and are slowly and very painstakingly at times renovating it and restoring it to its former glory, which, as some of our guests tonight who've been there and visited and stayed over will recognise as no mean feat. Now, I was particularly interested, Mark, to talk to you about how you're keeping warm. And I know that over summer, as you started your renovation work, it got very, very hot as well. So that's why I wanted to focus it tonight's Zoom about thermal performance. And also because I think there's a lot of our listeners who are living in homes that they haven't built a hemp house and they're not living in a beautiful passive house or whatever. So hopefully we can give them some ideas as well as we go.
I'll do my best, yeah.
Fantastic. So do you want to just start off by talking a bit about how you came to be responsible for the property?
Well, we're obviously part of the Narara Ecovillage, and like most people, we originally were going to purchase a blank plot or lot and build a new home. And at that stage, there were 2 existing residences on the property, including this one, which was originally going to be kept as a communal resource facility for the use of the whole village. And for various reasons, those plans changed. And so it was decided to sell the property, sell the house, and the proceeds were going to go to the village to let them do other things. So by that sort of process, we were the successful tenderers, I guess you'd say. And for those who don't know the property, you might have heard the chat with Peter earlier on. It's a classic old sort of weatherboard cottage design. I'll show you some pictures in a minute, which was built in 1915. I think it was completed in 1916. So very traditional cottage with a wraparound veranda. But as was common in those days, really almost no insulation. And it's had various uses over the years, which we might touch on. But suffice to say, it's got a tin roof and it gets exceedingly hot in the summer. I've heard some temperature readings just on the deck under the roof, somewhere around about low 50 degrees. And we're just above the frost line here officially, though I think we did actually get frost here last year. So we certainly don't get snow, but it is freezing cold and very damp through a lot of the winter, or at least it was. And we're a couple partly working from home now, and really our mission was to try to make it livable. We very much try to restore rather than renovate this beautiful place, because there are some fantastic features here. And part of the challenge and part of the thrill of it was that it is heritage listed by the council, so it's not state listed, but it does have a heritage listing on it by Central Coast Council. So there was quite a lot that we couldn't change even if we wanted to. And we didn't really want to, because there's just the most incredible charm, and we definitely feel like caretakers of a beautiful piece of history, but there was a lot of scope to make it definitely more livable in the contemporary age. Second to that, we are part of an eco-village, and we were definitely the most un-eco-friendly building you could imagine. So we've done what we can to try and bring it up to some sort of sustainable and environmental standards. We probably won't compete with some of the other new houses, which are incredible in what they've done here. But you'll see that we've done quite a lot, quite successfully. So, do you want to see some pictures?
Yes.
For those who haven't seen it, I think I can show you some big pictures. Can you all see that? Let me make that bigger. Is that showing up for everyone?
Yeah, that looks great.
Good. So that gives you an idea of the front of the house, big sort of wraparound veranda, and it had various residents, including Kate, who's with us tonight, for a long, long time, who really moved in after it had been vacant for also quite a long time. I think it was covered in mold and mildew and really very challenging to live in. A lot of the veranda boards were rotten or loose, and bearers and joists and things were, like, you can see the rat trap in the background there as well. So there's quite a lot of uninvited guests nearby as well. But the bones of the building are absolutely beautiful, and it's very sort of graceful. So we've actually had to replace, or been able to replace, a lot of the deck. So that's kind of before, and that's lovely new spotted gum hardwood, which we've been able to replace all the way around the deck. And that's a nice shot, isn't it? We've removed 1.5 internal walls, so there's been very little remodeling of the inside, and the challenge to make it livable was to try to make a lot of it much lighter. So it was very, very dark, as was the case with many of these old classic weatherboard houses. One central corridor with rooms off on either side, and a kitchen which was originally very, very dark, with really only one window with borrowed light out into the outside world. So thanks to my sister, who's also with us tonight, who helped us with the design, we took out those walls. That's in partial demolition, that picture you can see there. We took that wall out. And the new walls that we did, that's just for a bathroom that we had to remodel, obviously got insulated to within 1 inch of their lives. As you can see, so there were 2 new walls which have got, you know, lots of insulation in them. But with all the old walls, rather than trying to remove all the external panels or all the internal panels, we used a system that you can see here. You actually drill little holes all the way along the top between each of the studs. And what they're pumping in are these little polystyrene cubes, which look a bit like feta cheese, I always think. And they literally just pump them in with this great big pipe, which is hooked up to a truck that somebody's madly pouring cubes into the top of a pump. And they fill these right up to the top and then pack them with foam at the top so they don't come out. And then they just fill those in, and then we skim coat over those, and there's some still being done. So they're completely invisible once they're done. And walls are always one of the weak points in insulation for a house, along with windows and doors, which are even worse. But from pretty much not very much at all, I think the R rating of the walls is somewhere between about 2, 2.25 now, and has made the most incredible difference. I might come back to the floors in a minute, but we checked the walls with a thermal camera, so you can see where there are any gaps, which they kind of went back and filled. And you probably know it was very, very hot in the summer, so we took a picture. That is 1:46 p.m. and so the top temperature was just outside our kitchen window on the deck in the shade, so that's 46.2 degrees outside. And we've just got the windows closed. We didn't even have blinds at that point, and the second temperature, you can see there, 27.9, was what the internal temperature was, just thanks to the insulation that we had. So no air conditioning, no nothing. So that was pretty incredible. And it's not honestly that expensive. It's a 160 square meter house, roughly. And everyone says, oh, you know, it must have cost a fortune. It was about $6,000 to insulate all of the walls. And it takes, what, less than a day, I think, to do, which is pretty incredible. The floors all look like this. And there was no insulation underneath the floors. So fortunately, because the house is up on stilts, it's relatively easy to get access under the house. And we've put, oh, where did I have it? Ah, sorry, I've lost put this stuff insulation right up under the floorboards, all the way under the house, and that with the walls and the existing really, really good insulation that was in the roof already, which was only put in about 5 years ago, I think, just transformed what it's like to live through the summer, which we've done, and now we're in the winter, where we still get very little variation in the internal temperature. So we've insulated under the floors, we've actually treated all the floors, filled lots of holes in the floors, and we've just left most of the floors bare, because they're lovely. So you can see our kitchen coming along here, and we've just sealed the floorboards. We've got a few rugs, but nothing crazy. We've now got blinds on all of the windows. And you can see it's a kind of modern looking farmhouse type setup, but you wouldn't know that there's a wealth of technology hiding in the walls there. Just as an aside, apart from doing lots of insulating, and we've put ceiling fans in all of the rooms, reversible ceiling fans, so you can put any warm air down in the winter. Really everything you can see in these photos, apart from the bench tops in the kitchen, are second-hand. So my unbelievably talented and patient wife spent most of last year scouring Gumtree, and every table, chair, sofa, fridge, the stove, dishwasher, every piece of furniture you can see in these pictures was bought second-hand for virtually nothing, with zero packaging. And the kitchen that you can see here, we actually recycled the old kitchen in the house as it was. There was a fascinating talk here on sustainable kitchen design that we went to at the village here, and it was all about fancy materials. But right at the end, the presenter almost muttered under his breath. He said, "Of course, the most sustainable kitchen is the one you've already got." We thought, oh damn, maybe we should try and use what we've got. So we've dressed up the old kitchen and we've repainted it. We've put a firebox in the original fireplace in the sitting room. I don't know, you can debate the environmental merits of using that or not, but the timber all around here is free. It burns incredibly efficiently, and it stays incredibly snug and warm on these winter nights. Let me tell you, it's lovely. So that's, how do I stop sharing these? And the only other thing we have done in the end is put reverse cycle air conditioning in. It's all very well insulating what you've got, but there was no heating in the rest of the house, and using separate heaters in different rooms is incredibly expensive, very uneconomical. So we've, what have we done? Have we compromised? We've put a ducted system in, which is as environmentally efficient as we can get. We turn it on very little. We had it on till for about an hour this afternoon. I'm just sitting here now and I'm totally warm because it just keeps the heat in the house. So it's way more comfortable than it used to be to live here. So that's kind of where we're at now.
It's looking gorgeous, Mark. And I think you touched on something really important there, that you can go around in circles debating, you know, how eco certain choices are. But if you're working with an old home, it's very challenging to be able to get a solution that ticks all the boxes in terms of cost, in terms of efficiency, in terms of its eco creds. And certainly working with what you have is something that's super important and super valuable. So with your kitchen and with the fireplace, and I can guarantee you that there's more than one person here tonight sitting with the heater on in their own room going, oh, the ducted aircon would be so good.
The thing that one forgets is that lots of little things combine to make a huge difference. Things that we can all do, you know, having thick curtains and you know, blinds where you can't do curtains make a massive difference. just even low-cost things like having a sausage under each of the doors, which if you bother to buy them at all are about $2.50 at Bunnings, but you can make easily, make a huge difference. Sealing doors with foam or brushes and things. They're things that really everyone should do, because you can probably tell I'm English and I've never been so cold as I have been since I moved to Australia. And Nicky, my wife, says the same, because the houses just leak like sieves here. So sealing is really good. We looked at double glazing the windows, and I don't know if you could see, but they're all multi-pane sash windows. And fortunately, apart from costing a bomb to try and do it, we weren't allowed to by the heritage people, which probably saved me about $20,000 or $30,000 if we'd even had that option. So we couldn't double glaze, but we have tried to shade them and seal them with blinds. These are simple things that anyone can do and probably should do.
Thanks, Mark. And on Facebook, we've actually got someone else who's in a heritage house and is following along eagerly.
Oh, good. Good luck.
Glean, because I imagine that you've had quite a few suggestions about what you could do with the house, and then you've had to approach the council or the heritage officer. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, one of the obvious things to do would have been to have some kind of insulation underneath the tin roof on the deck, on the veranda, because that just radiates heat straight downwards and onto the walls of the house in the summer, which is why it does get so hot, even though you're in the shade. But that was completely not allowed. That would have been quite a simple fix. What else, Nicky? We've got a couple of external fans that we were allowed to put in on the deck, which makes a huge difference just on quiet summer evenings. It's also really good to keep the mozzies away in the summer evenings because they love this place. But we had to do a really detailed heritage impact statement for everything that we wanted to do, down to the colour of the house, which was this bright buttery yellow, which was not the original colour. I think that was only about 8 years old, and I've got pictures not that long ago when it was quite a subdued grey. So they were extremely concerned about anything and everything that we wanted to do that would change any impression of the external view of the house. Oh, I can't hear. Yeah.
That's certainly a challenge when you're trying to consider other people and other planning laws when you're updating your property. With your aircon, are you able to run it off solar panels or anything like that?
We certainly will be. We actually managed to negotiate permission to put panels on the roof, which we don't have yet. That's for various reasons, which are all kind of tied up with what's happening with PVs generally in the village. But we have permission to put them in. We've got budget to put them in, and we will definitely be doing that as soon as we can. I should have said most of the work on the house, apart from 2 walls and 1 bathroom, was we've had to completely rewire the house because the rats were chewing through quite a lot of that, and we've replumbed the house. So we're like all the homes in the Ecovillage, we've got dual water system. So we've got reclaimed water through washing machines and toilets and things, and potable water through everything else in the normal way.
I've got a question here too about your underfloor insulation.
Yeah.
You showed a picture of a packet of bats that looked like wall bats or ceiling bats. Is that what you put under your floor?
No. Oh, was that not the floor stuff? No. All right. I'm being told no. I think I showed you the wrong thing. Maybe that was some of the stuff that went in the walls. But it was a kind of earth wall, but it wasn't earth wall. And I think it's a rating of about 2. Is that? Taking me my brain's trust. 2.5, I'm being told. But when you have underfloor insulation and roof insulation, the sum of the parts is the sum of the whole is much greater than the sum of the parts. The two make kind of exponential benefit when you put the two together.
And as you say, often it's getting quite a few of those scoring the little points so that they add up to something greater.
Yeah,
And just totally personal interest here. Do you remember, or did you watch them installing that insulation under your floor? Are you able to talk through what that was like? You might need to get a brains trust.
We did. No, there was it 3 of them who were there, and at the front of the house, the clearance is really good. Like there's actually quite good storage under the house, and the house is a long way off the floor. At the back, it's maybe 30, 40 centimeters off the ground. And there was one really small guy who was on the team, and we said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he said, "What do you think?" And then I worked out that in those really small crawl spaces that he wriggles like a commando on his back under the thing. He's stapling the bats underneath the house. But I know that they really did go right to the back of the house, because in one of the replumbing things, there was a little hole through the floor, which we had to plug. And even there, and honestly, it was, can you see both hands? It was like this far off the floor. Under the hole was the insulation. So they were good to their word and did it all.
That's fantastic. I was hoping you'd tell me an easier way, because we did a similar thing here, and we installed the underfloor insulation, and our builder said, "Now, do you want us to do it for you, or do you want to save money and do it yourself?" And we said, "We'll save the money." And then that was about, I don't know, 6 months of my husband on his back under there with the strapping tape and the staple gun.
Oh, yeah.
But the kids ended up learning to use the staple gun, and as you say, full height is a real advantage.
Well, my chimney probably needs cleaning soon. Could we borrow one of your children?
Oh, we'll have to talk about that one. I remember at one point chatting with Nicky and saying, she mentioned that you actually took off a lot of the doors and swapped them around. Was that just for fun, or was there a reason for that?
No, there was a reason for that. Some of the external doors were just hollow core doors, and were definitely internal doors, which had ended up there for some reason. So we now have proper external doors on all our outdoor doors. That kind of makes sense. And why do we've swapped a few other doors around.
Well, sort of the internal doors are internal and the external, yeah.
Oh well.
For aesthetics.
For aesthetics, all the internal doors are definitely internal doors. And interestingly, some of the doors in the house predate the construction of the house. Our closet heritage advisor said, "Oh, these would be 1890s," and it was quite common. Doors were quite hard to build, and they're Canadian Oregon, I think, which is not found anywhere else in the house. So they've used the doors from somewhere else when they built the house, and you can tell also with the doors and all the woodwork. The servants' quarters at the back, where the kitchen used to be, which is where our kitchen is now, by the way, so I'm the servant, is much lesser quality woodwork, fittings, skirting boards, doors, compared with where the owners used to live at the front of the house. They got much better fittings and fit out. Little things I never would have noticed if this guy hadn't pointed them out and shown us.
That's fascinating. I find that sort of history of houses incredible. And I mean, even with more recent homes, often once you start looking under the house, or once you start sort of tapping on walls, there's a lot of secrets in most houses. And I mean, even like you say, just getting proper external solid core doors for the outside. You know, you might be pumping the aircon going, but if you've got a hollow core door as your front door, it's all just going straight through.
No, there's little quirks everywhere, like any house, but one of the common refrains of everyone who's done work on it was, wow, they really knew how to build in those days. They've never taken the shortcuts, you know, all the joists and bearers that are slotted into one another, kind of recessed, which you don't have to do if you're saving time. It kind of works okay. But all those things have been done really, really well. So the bones of this place are gorgeous, and we love it.
Mm. Can I just flick back to what you were saying about how you were not able to install double glazed windows, but you were able to do other treatments such as the blinds and the curtains. Were you able to do any kind of DIY double glazing? Like I've seen stuff on Pinterest or whatever with people attaching their own perspex sheeting and stuff like that. Is that something that would be allowable?
There is one window which is not a sash window above one of the doors, where we have put a perspex double. In fact, it's the room I'm in now. But I'm looking at Nikki, and
Don't you want plastic on the window?
partly we don't want plastic on the windows because the beautiful old sash windows are really nice. But
Would you like to have windows open?
the other thing with doing it that way is that you can't really open the windows, and we're both English, so we have the windows open all the time. We love a through draft, except when it's going to give you frostbite.
Oh, this is great. Mark, I've got some people on Facebook who are kind of, look, I really think it's so beautiful. I wish that we could be there. And can people be there?
On sustainable housing.
For sure. So the village does regular open days. You do have to pre-book for them at the moment. And I'm very happy for people to come and have a look as long as they can book with me. I'm always up for a cup of tea. And I don't know, the Sustainable House Day is always a big thing in the village because it's quite unusual that you have so many sustainable homes in one location. So it was a huge hit in past years. This year, Sustainable House Day is actually going to be an online event. I don't know that we qualified, but if we could put an addendum onto that, then we could certainly put it online. And anybody on Facebook, I'm getting a thumbs up from Liz. Then we could maybe have it as a side show to Sustainable House Day, which is in September this year. But yeah, by appointment, I'm happy to show people around. Nikki's much more shy than me, but.
Thanks, Mark. So if you had very minimal budget and you're currently sitting there really cold and you're running your little electric heater, you don't know where to start, what would be your suggestion for things that are easy to do and affordable?
You have to do the roof because I think that has to be your starting point. And I would put the thickest, best things that you can put in, depending on your roof design. It's not technically that hard. I have got pictures of it, but it is very, very thick. It's kind of 4.5 thick green stuff. Doing the walls gets a bit more involved, but where you've got easy access under the floors, as I say, it's not a small house. It's not huge, but that entire thing, labour and materials, was around about $3,000, and those two together would be my absolute starting point, and then just filling in any cracks, which is just low-tech stuff, like I said, sausages under the doors, foam around the windows, doors, that kind of stuff. We haven't replaced any of the windows, but we have made sure they run smoothly. We've redone the cords in them. We've put kind of wedges and things in some of them so they don't rattle. But if you can't do that, then just get some good curtains. All our curtains are second-hand. Everyone goes, what? And they fit beautifully. You've just got to look around. And they're thermal block-out curtains mostly. So in our sitting room, we've got them for $40. They'd be hundreds and hundreds of dollars and hours and hours and hours to make if you bought them or did them yourself. So look around. Yeah,
and that's very true, that often it's by looking around you can find good deals on stuff, and that's stuff that you can put up straight away and enjoy it straight away. Now I know here at the village quite a lot of the new homes have high rated double glazed windows, and I've actually noticed that a lot of them don't have curtains on them, which I think would be a bit of a luxury, because in our old house we certainly needed curtains to keep the draft out. But that's quite interesting that if you can upgrade to higher performance windows, that can have a big effect as well. Let's see. Sorry, Mark, I'm just seeing look at this. There's heaps of people who want to come and visit. New friends. If there's somebody who's living in a heritage stone home. Now, wouldn't that be...
Oh, I want to see theirs.
You see, that way, with the stone, surely you'd get the thermal mass that would hold the heat for you and hold the cold?
You'd think so. I don't know. Can they cook you? It just takes a long time to heat up and a very, very long time to cool down.
Yeah, and you're going to want to have that blanket around, that insulation around to maintain the temperature. Otherwise, it just goes in and out and in and out. Just having a bit of a look here. Yes, we've got Kate saying here that they have no better than a 10-degree difference between inside and out. So that means it must be getting pretty cold, because we've had some mornings here that have been about 6 degrees.
Yeah, it's 5 degrees this week on our deck.
Yeah.
We just so.
Yeah. And so have you taken your internal, your indoors temperature in the winter?
Yeah, it when we get up in the morning, it's probably fallen to about 17 degrees inside, and it'll be 5 degrees outside. I don't know what time of the morning it actually got down to 5 degrees, but yeah, the whole night we probably drop about 3 degrees just through the insulation.
That's extraordinary.
Mm.
And so do you have anything else on your wish list to do with the house?
Yes, we want to we do want to get solar panels, and our hot water heater is an antique and runs on electricity and is super expensive to run. So the moment that it peters out, we're going to put a heat pump in, and we've actually plumbed and wired that ready to go in at the other end of the house, which is much closer to the bathroom and the kitchen than where the current heater is now, so we don't waste so much water getting to it. So that's top of my wish list.
Very nice, very nice. And in the when we came to chat with you earlier in the week, you mentioned something about the painting. So the inside's looking pretty slick.
Well, on my wish list would be a free painter, because it's going to be like the Harbour Bridge. We've got, I think it's a 3-year painting project, and when we finish, we'll start again. But we're slowly going around the outsides. I've really been talking about insulation, but most of the paint in and certainly outside of the house was lead paint. There are some asbestos panels. Fortunately, the most benign asbestos that you could get, but even so, you have to be very careful trying to scrape lead paint off asbestos panels. So we've had as much of that remediated as we can. And to be honest, we cheated and then just put cement board over the top of the worst of the painted asbestos, so we can just paint a nice clean surface. And that was fine with heritage people. So yeah, if a painter was to magically appear, they'd be top of my wish list.
And again,
oh, and then we start on the garden.
Oh yeah, and again, that's that balance, isn't it? Of you know, you're wanting to do it properly because the house was built, as you said, with no shortcuts. But at the same time, it's a house for a modern age, and you know, people, we don't have those sort of craftsmen, we don't have those sort of painters that we can afford these days.
No, but I work partly from home, so I have the luxury of just being able to do it slowly. And you know what it's like when you do a house or do a garden. Every time you put your labour into a little part of it, you feel like you've kind of wrapped it up and taken care of it and feel pride in it. So we're just doing it slowly and trying to do it well.
Mm. And Mark, you mentioned with the garden, are you guys planning to do anything in the garden to kind of shade the house or make it more comfortable in winter?
We can't hugely shade the house because we're so close to the forest and the fire zones. We're very limited in terms of canopy. Like, we can't have any canopy trees, which are really the only ones that would give meaningful shade to the house. So no, would be the short answer to that question. But that's really what the veranda does for us instead.
Yeah, and we often see older houses with those big verandas. When I was a child, I wanted to live in a house with a big wraparound veranda. But it does, I mean, do you find that it blocks your winter sun coming in much?
Well, you tend to get more sun in the winter because the sun's lower, but no, it is fundamentally, it's still quite a dark house, even though we've done everything we legally could from a heritage perspective to improve light. We've moved the one skylight that was here, and things like that. And we put a solar tube in. I'm not sure you've been down since we did that, which is quite remarkable. But you don't get any direct sun in the house. Barely. Anyway. The cat, which isn't allowed out, has found the two bits where you get sun through the windows and takes up residence.
Oh, that's fantastic. Mark, I might actually look to unmute everyone and take some questions or some explanations from the crowd, because I know we've got a couple of people here who have more intimate knowledge of the house than myself. And certainly as people were coming into the meeting rooms, we were chatting with Peter and with Kate about it. And you mentioned something about the boys' dormitories. Mark, you mentioned that there was kind of the wealthy residents who lived at one end of the house and then the servants at the other, but does this house have more of a story than that?
Look, it's certainly, Peter can probably, and Kate can jump in. It's had various iterations. So at one stage it was used as a boys' home and as a kind of boys' dormitory. And there used to be an external laundry of some kind, which we found bits and bobs of drainage for. And I think when it was being used as a dormitory, the ablutions block and the toilets were on the other side of the road from us, where there's actually a chook shed there now. But I believe that the slab there technically is heritage listed, so it's a very significant chook shed that we have on the other side of the road from us. The boys' dormitory, I believe, got eaten by termites. Is that right? There certainly used to be 3 chimneys and 3 fireplaces at one stage. There's only 1 now, but we can see on the floorboards where there were other fireplaces, some for warmth, some for cooking. And yeah, then it's been various stages of government use as a sort of government-owned building as part of the Agricultural Department of Primary Industries role in its latter part of its life. Okay, Peter, you can probably add to that.
Yeah, I didn't know that you could hear me. The dormitory is quite interesting because what they were doing is they were taking selected boys from the Mount Penang Center. And they were giving them a chance to live there and to learn skills, particularly in the when they're doing the grapevines and everything. Apparently quite a few of the boys became very skilled at it. And at the same time, near there is where the old forest school was. You've heard about the forest school, the first one in Australia, and started in 1917. But the school had problems. They couldn't find the staff, particularly a principal, because they couldn't find somebody with the qualifications that they wanted. Apparently it was a really good pay. I think it was £500. So the school kind of fumbled along for a year or so, and then in the end they kind of gave up and it just sort of fell apart. But the building was still left there, and what I'm getting around to saying is the dormitory boys apparently had classes in the old forestry school building. So that school closed down in the early 1920s, and I think in the 30s the building was removed.
That makes sense, because we've got pictures of the owners in 1923, or was it 29?
Late 20s.
I think it's 1929. There's a beautiful shot of the owners with his family and then with some of the staff on the property. There's a charming one of their son must be aged about 10, on his way to a fancy dress party.
Oh.
Standing at the bottom of the front steps to the house. So we're hoping to mount some of those photos in our hallway, just as a throwback to what it used to be like.
That's funny, Mark, because John Stone told me that he's the one who converted the old dormitory wash house into a chook shed.
Ah, well, there you go. That's where Kate housed her chickens all the time she was there.
Which has remained ever since, yes.
Oh, that's funny, because whenever I've taken people on site tours here, I often point out the chook shed and the toilet block, and I mention the heritage listed toilet slab, and they're like, what? That's nice to have a bit more context to the story now.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah.
And Mark, at the you've got a big set of stairs that lead up at the front of your property, but they kind of look like fire escape stairs. Are they original?
They're very rusted metal, very uncharming, and they're totally non-original. So there are some beautiful pictures of the original. There used to be a double staircase coming up either side to the approach to the front door, and at the very least, quite soon we're going to have to replace the stairs anyway because they're rusty, and I'm terrified someone's going to lean on the banister on the balustrade. But we're considering trying to apply for a heritage grant to actually reinstate both, so you can come up the way you used to, because it looked lovely. It was very simple. It's not very ornate. Nothing. It was built in the war, in the Great War, so nothing here is ornate. It's very solid, but rather lovely, and it'd be lovely to put those back.
It's certainly interesting, you know, watching you restore it and take it back to its former glory.
For those who don't know, Vanessa lives immediately above us, so she can see us working like ants just below her. Okay, what are they working on today?
Oh, I love the process of watching you select the paint colours. Like
Oh, God.
so much heart went into that. You know, the colour of your house makes a profound impact on everyone, including your neighbours. Vested interest.
Tell me, did Rebecca Carty have a lot to do with the restoration? Did you have to talk to her a lot?
Rebecca has been our primary contact all the way through, and she's very passionate about it.
Yes, she is. She's very good. Yeah.
She's been an incredible support and really, really helpful.
Beautiful.
Good boundaries too. No, you absolutely can't do that, but I'm negotiable on this. So we should, full disclosure, we've been successful in a couple of grants, 3 grants actually, from Central West Council to assist with some of the projects, mainly replacing the deck, which was in a fairly parlour state. So we're incredibly grateful for that support, and all my fellow local ratepayers, thank you.
And that's actually a really good point too, Mark, because there might be people out on this call listening in who are in a heritage house and who are feeling a bit frustrated about the limitations that their property's given them. But the grants is a really great idea, because often councils and mainly local councils and community organisations often have a prize pool that you can, you know, apply for, and that can really help with implementing some of these features.
They really do. I mean, it's a two-edged sword having anything with heritage listing. You know, some people run a mile because it can be very problematic. But Rebecca Carty on the council said, you know, this is the only house like it that we have on our books. You know, they have many other heritage sites for whatever reason. And I think almost every council is the same, that they actually do have grants available. You've got to go looking for them, but you know, it's worth a look, because if you qualify there, you can really get some help.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thanks, Mark. Just whilst I'm seeing if anyone's got final questions for you, it's worth pointing out a couple of upcoming events. We have our next open day coming up on the 25th of this month from 1 till 4. And with coronavirus, we are requesting that people pre-book, and the information on how to book is on our website, which is nararaecovillage.com, if you haven't already been there. In 2 weeks' time, on Friday night, we'll be having another Zoom. I'm hoping that we can pin down the man who grows the mushrooms here. One of the families, the dad, Lincoln, is an avid backyard mushroom grower, and he's experimenting with all sorts of things. Oh, fantastic. I've just heard that he's watching, so hopefully there's a bit of pressure now to Lincoln to sign up. I know that that's one that certainly, like, our members would be very interested in seeing how he grows his mushrooms, and they taste delicious. There's nothing like a bag of homegrown, you know, safe.
You can tell Lincoln that our shiitake mushroom omelette this week was delicious.
Oh, fantastic. You might be able to get a bigger crowd to take orders from. Otherwise, we've also got a couple of other events coming up. We have oh, that's nice. We have our campfire dinner coming up on the night of open day by the looks of that. So you can come to the open day and hang around, come down to the campfire with us, all socially distanced appropriately and all that, and enjoy the company of some of our members and friends here. And we actually have some great campers down at the campground at the moment who are helping on a couple of our really unique builds here. So I think Ben's got a couple. He's building a house entirely out of reclaimed things, pretty much down to like the last screw and nail. And oh, that's the other catch. Ben's house is perfectly round. So I don't know if you've ever tried to construct anything, but usually square is easier than round. But he's done a stellar job with that. And I think that Linda might still have some woofers down there, and she's been building a hobbit house up on the hill. So there'd be some fantastic conversation if you are able to make it on the 25th of this month. I think that's probably all our questions for now answered, Mark, but I want to thank you for giving up your Friday night and coming to have a chat with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, come and see us if you're up here.
I love the story of the doors, Mark. The old doors.
Oh, they're lovely. We kept all the, I think you call it door furniture, and Kate very kindly sent me an article about somebody else restoring her home, and all they'd done was try and get keys to old locks and revive the old locks. So we've got most of the original locks, all the original doors, and oh, they're wonderful. They're beaten up and chipped, and I love it. We don't want to play them flat or make them look perfect. They're lovely as they are. Every little knock from furniture when they moved house in 1923 is still there, and we want to keep it there.
And they're actual antique. You said from the late 1800s, is that right?
Probably, what did he say, about 1890s. They're Canadian Oregon, and how many panels there are, you can usually tell their age.
Such a great story. So many good stories there, Mark, but we'll have to leave it there for this evening.
Okay.
So
thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mark. And we might see some of you in 2 weeks' time on our next Friday night Zoom.
Thanks. Nice to meet you, Peter.
Nice to meet you all.
Have a good night.
You too, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
See you.